something like age is makes more sense to identify as. You at one point had female genitalia when you were in utero. So you've passed through that, right? And what happens to intersex people is that there's just some kind of like different, there's a different of development that occurs there. So respective to us talking about these categories, it's not a case of there being this hard line thing. I mean, the reason why we also are not going to get anywhere here is because I actually would agree with you that something like woman is what would, in a technical sense, be called a floating signifier. So it doesn't have this like particular designatable meaning to it, right?
All right.
So that's why we're not going to go anywhere.
Welcome back to my channel, guys. It's Clinton White here. So checking out Matt Walsh event on things only at YEF. So this is a trans person shows up to Matt Walsh event. Let's check out what happened.
Everything that you have said on gender identity, gender expression, John money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction, you are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct. I don't know if you've ever heard that from a trans person before. So I'd like to say that I'm actually a part of that organization that was going to come and try and derail you tonight. I didn't hear a single thing, though, that constituted an attack on queer or trans lives or an attack on me personally. So I don't know what they were on about there. Moreover, everything that you have said on gender identity, gender expression, John money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction, you are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct. I don't know if you've ever heard that from a trans person before. I identify as a trans woman. You are 100% correct on that. And it is an absolute travesty that the trans community bases everything on such vacuous concepts. My thing is, though, is I don't agree with your conclusion. I don't agree with it.
Okay. I'm cook.
And but more so, the reason why I don't is less a matter of argumentation and more so a matter of method. You've stated time and time again that your approach to this is to try and keep things simple and uncomplicated, as in you don't try and engage with the nuance of the position of trans people. But that's exactly how my org treats you. They don't think that your arguments are worth looking at because they cast you as a transphobe. I did otherwise. And I looked, I'm like, yeah, no, this guy's absolutely correct on all these things.
So which conclusion are you? You said you disagree with my conclusions.
Well, it's the conclusion that of the model that you're postulating of gender. Of that it's just this, you have man, woman, they're biologically contingent. My sort of question is, do you think that defaulting to simplicity, if this is the most dire issue of the age, which is something else that I agree with you on, do you really think that a method of simply recoursing to the most simplistic matter of approach is what we should be doing here?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
You
because, I mean, I appreciate, I appreciate everything that you said, and I appreciate your attitude. I very rarely encounter your attitude from that side of the ideological aisle. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I do think that making it simple is the right approach because, to my view, it is a very simple question. Now, if you want to get into the personal experiences of each individual and someone who is who's experiencing gender dysphoria and what do we do to treat that problem? Sure, there's all kinds of personal, subjective nuances and things like that. And, if my child came to me and said that they were confused about their identity, I wouldn't just say, get out of my face. I would want to sit down and talk to them. And that's when you get into, that becomes sort of an interpersonal exchange. Yeah. And so you get into some of those personal nuances and everything, and that's fine. Mm-hmm. But the underlying fact, the underlying reality is simple, that there are only males and females in the human race. There are no other categories. There is no third sex. It doesn't exist. Even though we hear about intersex people, an actual intersex person would be someone who has the reproductive capacities of both men and women, males and females. Such a person has never existed, ever. So what I see here is a binary system, and in that way, it's very simple, and I think that has to be our message. Yeah.
Okay, I don't think it's satisfied with that.
I would still even say respective to that.
Okay.
That
here we go.
Even if, from your standpoint, there's only this binary, there's two. There's complexities and nuances even within social navigation that still might be worth you looking into. I would also say that a lot of your facts also are off. Respective to, for instance, the first sexual reassignment surgery actually happened in the 1920s. So that was before John Money. So it's not a case that
I didn't say his was the first.
What?
I didn't say his was the first. It was probably the first one done on a 2-year-old, but I said he was the one who invented. You started by saying you agree with everything that I said, and now we're going back and you disagree. I'm a little confused now.
My point is that if you have it to where you can get to a different conclusion from the same arguments, it means that there might be something deeper going on here that for people who are actually philosophers, not rhetoricians, need to be dealing with.
Okay, we got to move to the next question, but let me just ask you this so we can clarify where we are. Yeah. Do you agree that there are only males and females in the human race?
No.
Whoa.
Okay, so you definitely don't agree with my conclusion then at all.
No.
We actually are totally on opposite sides of this question, it turns out. Okay, so what are the other categories if not male and female?
Just tell us.
We are going to be here all night if I have to doing that.
We're not, because there's none that you can list. So it's actually a very short conversation.
All right. Well, you're wanting to say that you have these other social categories, right? It's a question of, you're saying are, right? So the question here for me would be one of ontology, insofar as we're trying to posit that there is some kind of specificity, right? And you would look at something like intersex and say that this is like some kind of weird border case, right? It's a question of the kind of continuum that would allow for one to come into an embodiment that you would cast as male and female. I mean, something that's really interesting is you said that something like age is makes more sense to identify as. You at one point had female genitalia when you were in utero. So you've passed through that, right? And what happens to intersex people is that there's just some kind of like different there's a different of development that occurs there. So respective to us talking about these categories, it's not a case of there being this hard line thing. I mean, the reason why we also are not going to get anywhere here is because I actually would agree with you that something like woman is what would, in a technical sense, be called a floating signifier. So it doesn't have this like particular designatable meaning to it, right?
All right.
So that's why we're not going to go anywhere.
That's pretty clear. But I appreciate it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
I just want to make just two quick follow-ups on that. Is that one thing? I think that this is a tactic that you encounter on the left all the time when it comes to gender, which is to try to obscure it and make it sound complicated and to throw a lot of, these sort of abstract ideas into it. And from what I've discovered, and this conversation didn't change my view at all on that, is that that's the only tactic they have, right? Is to just try to make it seem complicated, but yet, while also not offering any alternative answers at all.
Yeah.
And the final thing on intersex, because maybe someone else will bring this up, just so we could get that question out of the way, because it always comes up. Number one, intersex, that category has nothing to do with trans, right? Trans man or trans woman is a biological male who identifies as a female. Yeah. So even if I were to agree that intersex people are some sort of exception, that would do nothing to vindicate the trans man, because that's a different category.
Yeah, that's different.
But as it turns out, intersex people are not an exception. These are people who suffer from a deformity, from a condition. Just like someone might be born with one arm rather than two. That does not negate or undermine the fact that human beings have two arms. But if someone is born with only one, then you know that something went wrong along the way. They ought to have had two, but they didn't because something went wrong. So a deformity or a sickness doesn't undermine the principle that we're dealing with.
Yeah, my first said it all, like, guys, this about the intersex stuff, I try to like bring it up as an example of their trans stuff and whatever. But no, that's a different thing. People born with those are just like deformities. That doesn't mean that's how it is in real life. That come on, we check everybody. That's not how everyone else is. That's not everyone is supposed to. So like we have a standard for being a person. So if some stuffs are not in a particular person or in a group of people, then it's found to be like an error or something like that. So yeah, I mean, he can make an argument with that. Definitely can make an argument with that. Anyway, let me know what you guys think about this whole thing down in the comment section. Like the video, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.